Hello there, friendo. Thank you very much for pressing play on Stand Up. I have Andrew Spar joining me today. He is an educator and now the president of the biggest teachers union in Florida. Always inspiring, always powerful, and I always learn so much from him. He's become a friend and a mentor, and we have a great conversation with him on today's program about everything that teachers and educators are facing across the country, and especially in Florida, where they're not even allowed to say gay anymore. All right, also joining me as it is Friday, and I usually get to talk to them, comedians Ophira, Eisenberg, and Christian Finnegan, who I performed with last weekend. We had a great conversation. It got deep as always, and light and funny as well. And so that is what I've got for you today. Thanks to everybody who joined me at the Hangout last night, which hasn't happened yet as I'm recording this. I'm trying to do the Friday show before I get intoxicated with so many of you on Thursday nights. So I just want to ahead of time say thank you for such a wonderful Hangout. It's always great and renews me and my week and fills my cup up. And speaking of the week, thank you to all the amazing guests who joined me on the program this week, including yesterday, Matt Gallagher, which was really great. People are talking a lot. People are saying it's a very good conversation. Stephen Greenhouse and the labor movement. Dr. Amakongo Dabinja joined us for the first time as well. Tyson Slocum and Christina Greer, Tim Wise and Bill Boyle on Monday. Thank you to all of you who support this podcast with a paid subscription. And if you haven't, please sign up now. Go to standupwithpete.com right now and sign up and join us. All right. Well, I don't do the news segment on Fridays because I usually get plastered with listeners on Thursdays, and so that's a lot of fun. Plus, I got to punch out of the news one day a week. Can I? Well, I am now going to, because of that, get right to my first guest. I already told you a little bit about him, but Andrew Spar was a longtime listener of the old show at Sirius XM. I got to know him. He brought me down to to speak to and hopefully inspire and entertain educators, which led to so many other opportunities with teachers unions across the country that I've been able to help organize and inspire and motivate and follow, because there are so many amazing teachers all over this country, including my mom, who's a retired teacher from the Syracuse City School District. We are in the fight at our Board of Educations across the country. Many listeners have reached out to me talking about their wins and losses in their communities, but we're in it, and no one has been more in the fight than Andrew Spar, who is just an awesome guy. He is, of course, like I said, the president of the Florida Education Association and a vice president at American Federation of Teachers, a former educator himself, and a fierce advocate for educators and every adult basically who works in schools across Florida, which is, you got to be like the special forces of advocators in a school in a state like that for educators where they're so abused. Okay, well, I've done enough talking. Let's get to it right now. Andrew Spar on Twitter at Andrew Spar FEA. Let him know you heard him, and let's get it on. All right, there he is. Andrew Spar joins me now. Mr. President, always great to see our bald heads next to each other. How are you?
That's right. Good morning. How are you doing, Pete?
It's always a jarring image, It's like we're looking at each other, and then I get in my head, I'm like, is this what it's like to be interviewed by me?
Hey, I'm much better looking. Come on now.
I'm starting to think that. I used to not think that, but as you age, you really are looking good, and I feel like I might be going downhill.
You know what it is? I have the goatee, so there's just a little bit of gray. You're growing it all in, and it's getting gray there, Pete.
Well, the difference is you have an actual, front-facing job, and you're the president of the biggest teachers union in Florida. You're always out front dealing with them. I live in a shed. So anyway, it's great to see you, and I have a lot to talk with you about. How things in let's just start with this. How's things in Florida with schools and everything?
Well, that's like the $1 million question. You got 3 or 4 hours.
Let me start with something more specific that I really wanted to get to. I feel like we've been talking and arguing about this manufactured controversy of critical race theory in schools, which of course isn't happening, but we've had to react to it at my board meetings, in my community, and obviously your legislature outlawed teaching it, even though it wasn't being taught. Be like outlawing teaching that the moon is made of cheese. Okay. But specifically the next and I think really also very effective strategy, you saw this sink the Democratic governor, at least a lot of analysts say, in Virginia, parental rights. I want to talk with you about that. We're going to hear that question. I'm hearing that question. What are my rights as a parent? And how do we parents get more control over what our kids are learning, Andrew?
Yeah, so let's start there, right, with parental rights. I'm a parent. You're a parent. A lot of the listeners are parents. We have kids in the public school system. My daughter is in 7th grade, and I keep hearing about parental rights. So the first question I always ask is, whose parental rights are we talking about here, right? Because it seems like there's a process already in place in just about every school district in America. If you don't like the book your child is reading, if you think it goes against your values, so let's say you don't want them reading To Kill a Mockingbird, you have the right now in just about every school in America to say, I don't want my child reading that. Could you please give me an alternative assignment for my child? And guess what? They will. They will. The difference is saying, I don't want my kid to read To Kill a Mockingbird, nor any other kid to read To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, that to me isn't just about parental rights. That's kind of infringing now on my parental right. Who says you have the right over my child? Now, clearly, there is a community standard, right? And that's why we have school boards who are elected by the community. They represent the parents and the community and the interests of our kids. Interesting in Florida. Florida has nonpartisan school board elections. We don't have people run by party. They don't say I'm a Republican running for school board, or I'm a Democrat running for school board, or I'm a communist running for school board. Like, no one does that, right? Right. They say I am running for school board, and they talk about kids. And there was an attempt in Florida to actually make those elections partisan. It didn't go anywhere. But here's the interesting thing. You can look at every school board in Florida. You had school boards in Florida that implemented mask mandates. You had school boards in Florida that have really been trying to make sure they do everything they can to support our kids in a variety of ways. What you can't tell in Florida is that 71% of school board members in the state are actually registered Republicans. And including in places where the governor has gone after because he doesn't like their politics. But they are Republicans in a large numbers. And it's because they're focused on kids, not on political party. And that's what we got to do. Focus on kids, not political party.
Right. Well, when parents, you're saying my parental right and your parental right might be at odds with each other. I don't want there to be any conversation about climate change in school. And if you're going to talk about climate change, I don't want you to teach our kids that human beings are playing a primary role because you're going to make them feel bad about being human. And I don't want my kids feeling badly, but I went a little far with that, but it's not that inaccurate. So that's an example, right? I don't want them to learn something and you have a different opinion on that.
Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, again, we have this community standard. We have standards in the state of Florida. Again, I'm going to point out the standards in just about every state are set at the state level. We don't have national standards per se. There's been attempts and it's not gone anywhere. We're about the only country in the world, by the way, that doesn't have national standards. We leave that up to the states. And so states adopt their own standards. But again, in Florida for 20 plus years, it's been one party control. And that party has controlled the standards in Florida. And again, I'm just going to say the focus has been on making sure kids know things like an accurate and honest history, making sure that kids know about science, about the environment. Florida, the environment's pretty big. I mean, we're surrounded on 3 sides by water. And so there's a lot of issues. There's been attempts to drill for oil off the coast of Florida that have gone down with bipartisan support because the citizens of Florida care about the environment. These are not partisan issues. And what we see happening, and let's get at what the underlying issue is here, right? So Florida has had school vouchers and charter schools in existence for over 20 years now, for over 20 years. And the number of students attending public schools, the percentage of students who attend public schools has stayed about the same. It was about 90% of kids attended public schools in Florida 20 some odd years ago. Today, it's still about 90%. What does that tell us? It tells us that parents believe in their public schools. Parents see their public schools as an integral part of the community. So why is there this attempt to drive a wedge between parents and schools, between parents and teachers? That's what we're seeing. Well,
do you have an answer for why they are doing driving this wedge? Because that's exactly what is happening in my town. We've got a guy who is pushing it on Facebook all the time and constantly, manufacturing actual things that happen in school or misrepresenting things that happened in school. And then, by the way, not giving, it's a great thing to do. You can say something happened in a school with a specific kid. And you know what? The principal can barely say anything because he has to legally protect the rights, the privacy of the kids. So it's hard for them to fight back. But when they make these things up, why are they doing it? Why are they talking about these things?
Yeah. So here's my theory, right? And it's a theory. It's not critical race theory, but it's a political theory. And my theory on this is they're trying to turn the extreme. And let's talk about this. This is an extreme element. And an extreme element out there is trying to turn parents on their teachers, on their schools. Why? Because it is the way to eventually wipe out public education. So we want to see what happens when you take away public schools. Look at the country of Chile. The country of Chile, and I think we've talked about this before, they had a robust public school system. There was a desire to privatize that entity many years ago. They went in, they privatized. A lot of outside agitators led this charge. They privatized the public school system and gave every parent a voucher. What we call in the United States now is an education savings account. That's the catchword now. We're going to give everyone an education savings account. You decide this is how we're going to control. This gives ultimate control to the parents. Right? Because we're going to give you an amount of money. You go get your child's education wherever you want. And when they did that in Chile, they saw the public education system completely dissolve, go away. And they saw the economy tank. They saw communities fall apart. And now they're spending billions of dollars to reestablish their public school system. Here in Florida, there's a county just outside of Tallahassee called Jefferson County. Jefferson County is a very small, very rural, minority county, a high percentage of African-American students in that county. And they took that several years ago, 5 years ago to be exact, and they said, we're going to make that a charter county. We took it out of public control, gave it to a charter school company who was going to help this district. And guess what? The schools are doing no better. The charter school company has given up. They're walking away. It's now going back to the public school system. But let me add one thing on that, and that is this. In that scenario, they gave that charter school company double the money that public schools get, literally double the money. And now that the charter school is going away, the resources are going back to what they were before.
Yeah, of course.
So the charter school had double the money and failed. And that's why they're going back to the public schools. And
there's so many more examples of that across the country. We're just talking about Florida. All right, so what do I say to this question, which is being asked on our local Facebook page, where we have a board of election campaign underway, and it's been already really obviously divisive, but this applies to schools all over the country. So this is the question that's being asked. Looking for community input to a simple question for all stakeholders. Do you feel school faculty should be sharing political viewpoints with your child on campus? Do you think school faculty should be sharing their political viewpoints with your child on campus? Andrew, what would you say to that question?
I would say it's a false question. Teachers right now don't share political viewpoints. That's a fact. This idea, and I'm not saying there's not a one-off somewhere where you could point to an example, but as a rule, we don't. We're held to a very high ethical standards. We don't get to impart our wishes and desires on the kids, and we don't do it. What we want kids to do is to think independently. Look, every other country in the world looks to the United States when it comes to education around one thing. And the question they ask all the time is, how do you teach critical thinking, ingenuity, and entrepreneurship? Because no other country does it better than the United States of America. And we do it because we don't script our lessons, which is an attempt that's being tried to be, has been tried, right? We actually facilitate and encourage discussion from varying viewpoints. Every assignment that teachers give in social studies, for example, and that's where it's most often brought up, but in social studies is, here's an issue. What are the pros and cons to this issue? You have to argue both sides. My daughter had to just do a writing assignment the other day, had to argue two sides of the argument. That's the writing assignment. That's what we do in our schools all the time because we want kids to think independently. We want them to challenge what they're seeing. I want to add this. The other thing we've heard about, and we've heard it in Florida with the House Bill 1552, which is known as the Don't Say Gay bill in more common circles, but this idea of kids shouldn't feel uncomfortable. And again, it comes back to which kids shouldn't feel uncomfortable, A, and B, have you ever heard the saying, get outside your comfort zone? Because that's what education is. You get outside your comfort zone to learn, right? To experience things you don't otherwise experience. And when you do that, you are learning. And so I'm sorry, but we're going to always feel uncomfortable when we're discussing new topics because we don't know the answers yet. And until we get through that process, that's how it works.
When it comes to books and book bannings, as it relates to what you just said, you mentioned, usually it's these controversial issues are pointed to happening in some kind of social studies, government history class. But let's say you have an English class and the assignment is there's a book, and in the book, a character is sexually assaulted or even raped. Parents are now pointing to things like that and getting those books banned, when in fact, what that does, reading that book, is it creates a classroom discussion around sexual assault and rape, which of course is uncomfortable, but it's exactly what young people at a certain age, in an age-appropriate way, need to learn and have a discussion about so they can understand, frankly, right from wrong. Right? That's not been so controversial in the past, and more specifically, that's what happens, right?
Yeah. So let's start with the fact that it's a small group of parents, right? Overwhelmingly parents believe in what we're doing in our schools, overwhelmingly, and they should. And again, parents should be engaged in their child's education. Not only do we have open houses at the beginning of the school years where we lay out what we're going to be teaching during the year, give out syllabus and all the information you might need. We often send home emails on a regular basis detailing what we're doing in class, what's coming up, reminding us of tests that are coming up. I get it all the time from my daughter's teacher. I even get reminders to say, hey, check the online gradebook to see your child's progress, to make sure they're turning in their homework. I get things like that on a regular basis. And everything we do in our schools is age appropriate. So these questions, these false questions, and they are false questions because they're not saying, do you think we teach things inappropriately in the schools? They start with the premise that we are. Should teachers be teaching this in schools? Well, they're not. So why would you be asking that question other than to try and create a false narrative? And so I think parents being engaged, parents knowing what's going on in the schools, sitting down and talking to your child. We had a campaign here in the school district where I was, where the union worked with the district, and it was called the Be There campaign. Everyone has these devices, cell phones, right? And smartphones. Even kindergarten kids, by the way, have smartphones. And how much do we monitor the kids' use on those phones? But what we said is put those phones down when you pick your kids up in the afternoon, or they get off the school bus in the afternoon, or they walk in the door in the afternoon, or you're sitting down for dinner. Put the devices aside and have a conversation about what are you doing in school today? What were some of the things you learned? What was your favorite subject today? Why? What was the most challenging subject and why? That's what we should be talking about, because if we do that, then here's the thing. We're connecting what's happening at school to what's going on at home and vice versa. You know what's going on as a parent, and your child knows you're invested in their learning, because it does take all of us working together to educate the child. Public schools are parents, teachers, staff, administrators, and community all working together to educate every child, regardless of race, background, zip code, gender identity, sexual orientation, or ability. And that's what it takes. We should care and love for every child.
So well said, as always. Specifically, these parental rights things, when people are demanding that they have more of a say, I just want to scream and yell, but you do nothing. You don't go to parent-teacher conference. You don't contact the teacher. You're just sitting here on the outside and screaming at the BOE meeting or on Facebook, but you actually don't look at the email that we get sent. It's almost annoying just because it's more email, but I get emails from our schools every week that tell me exactly what both of my daughters are learning in both of their separate schools. Every assignment, every lesson, it's there. And every parent is getting that. And that's not just my school. That's happening throughout the country. And yet parents are screaming that they want more control, yet not paying attention or participating in any of the many ways that I just mentioned. Is that fair to say?
again, I'm going to go back to, I think it's a small group of parents. I don't think it's the majority. And in some cases, it's not even parents who have kids in the public schools. That's what we've seen here in Florida. But there's certainly, look, if you say to any parent, should you have a say, should you be the deciding factor in your child's education? Every parent's going to say yes. And here's the thing, they are. You can call the school anytime. You can call your child's teacher. You can email your child's teacher. I do it. You can talk to your child and find out what's going on, what is happening, what are some of the things that are going on. Here's what I worry about as a parent, right? Florida has one of the worst teacher and staff shortages in the nation. We currently have about 5,000 teacher vacancies, and the Florida Department of Education is saying by the end of the year, they expect over 9,000 teacher vacancies just in the state of Florida. And we think, based on the data we have, we estimate that there will only be about 2,000 teachers who graduate from Florida's colleges and universities. So there's a 7,000 gap right there just in Florida. Right. And it's like this everywhere across the nation. My daughter, who's in 7th grade, has not had a science teacher since the 3rd week of January. After the winter break, her science teacher came back and said, I can't take it anymore. I'd rather be home with my child, and I'm in a position where I can, and resigned her position with 2 weeks notice. And they have not been able to find a science teacher since then. So here's what I'm worried about as a parent, which I think most parents are. My child is getting gypped right now of the science education she's entitled to and should get. And I demand, because we can't find teachers and staff. And what do we have the governor of the state of Florida doing? Yeah. We have him going around the state vilifying teachers. And that's what some of these people, that school board person you're talking about that's running for office there, that person is vilifying teachers by insinuating that teachers are doing nefarious things in our public schools, that they're somehow sexualizing kids. We actually had a teacher in the state of Florida just recently. He's a very popular kindergarten teacher, teacher of the year for his school, gets all kinds of accolades. He has pictures in his classroom, just like most teachers do, of his family. And his family happens to be his significant other. They're not married yet, but it's another guy. He's gay. And so this leads to questions, right? Kindergarten kids are curious. They're inquisitive. So they'll ask even, my wife, when she has a picture of our family, is that your husband? Are those your kids? Those are the kinds of questions kids ask all the time. And this teacher has been getting attacked publicly because he went on the news and said, I should be able to talk about my family just like you. That's the problem we have right now. We shouldn't vilify teachers. The governor in the state of Florida went around and said, teachers are teaching kids to hate cops. Teachers aren't teaching the Holocaust. Teachers are sexualizing kindergarten kids. This is what the governor in the state of Florida is saying about teachers who sacrifice so much, who are woefully underpaid, and who are fed up and walking away in record numbers. But it's part of their plan, and that's the problem.
There's just so many issues. You and I have been talking for years. I've learned so much from you because of your work as an educator and with educators about the real issues, the real problems. And some of the stuff is harder to understand when it comes to curriculum and testing and class size. And some of the stuff is, more controversial about how you want to teach or what should be taught or how to use funds most appropriately. But you're talking about a simple, huge problem. Your kid doesn't have a teacher, and they're talking about shit that isn't happening.
Yep. Yeah, we got to refocus on what matters here. And what matters is that every child who comes into our schools is loved and cared for and safe. And that every child who comes into our schools gets the education they deserve and need. And we can't sit there and decide, well, this kid is look, middle school is where kids go through, who am I, right? This is where they go into puberty. This is where kids are trying to figure out who their friends are. Who do I want my friends to be? Middle school is a critical time for teachers, for students in middle school not to have teachers there because there's so many vacancies is a problem. For the fact that we literally have in Florida so few bus drivers now that they're having to double and triple routes, that kids sometimes are getting to school late, where school districts are saying to parents, you may want to figure out another way to get your child to school because we don't have enough bus drivers. Yeah. That's what parents want to be talking about. That's what I want to be talking as a parent. How are you making sure my child's getting what they need? talking about things that aren't happening, making up stories about what might happen in public schools, talking about CRT, which isn't happening, talking about diversity, which we should, right? It's what makes us rich. These are not real issues. What the real issues are is, why can't we get teachers and staff to come work in our schools? And what are we doing to make sure that we address that immediately, not allow it to fester and get worse?
Yeah, you talk to teachers each and every day, and you mentioned a story about a teacher who happens to be gay and the kind of the chilling effect that would have on a teacher. As we wrap it up here, I mean, I could just talk. This is such an important issue. You're doing such important work, and every day I don't know how. It seems so insurmountable, but you do it, and you have so many amazing people that do it with you down there at FEA. What else are you hearing from educators in terms of their concerns with what your state legislature is instituting?
So listen, it's tough right now in Florida to be a teacher and to work in our schools. Not only is pay ridiculously low, there's actually over 20 different rules and laws that govern teacher pay in the state of Florida. That's like, we have the most complex system of paying teachers in the state of Florida than anywhere else in the world for any profession. Like, that's how crazy it is in the state of Florida. And then on top of that, you add the disrespect, because it is about disrespect, right? Do you respect teachers enough to care and to try to change things? And if you're going to respect teachers, you got to look at pay. You got to be fair about pay. If you're going to respect teachers and people who work in our schools, you got to give them the support they need. You got to stop vilifying them, right? And we got to talk about what it is that we need. Student discipline is off the chart. And again, not just in Florida, but across this nation, because we haven't really addressed the mental health questions that have come out of COVID. We have students who have lost family members. We have students who have said, I'm sick and tired of craziness that we've had to go through for the last 2 years. I'm tired of worrying about if I'm or someone in my family is going to get sick. That's what we should be talking about. How do we help kids with their mental health? How do we help them with their frustration? How do we help them with the fact that they really have had a disruptive learning process for 3 school years now? And what do we do about that? And how do we make sure we have, and not just for kids, by the way, we got to do that for the adults too. Let's face it. All of us in society have been struggling these last 2 years. Yeah. We're feeling the stress. We're feeling the anxiety. We're feeling the frustration. Now we're dealing with, inflation, whether it's real or not, because whether it's driven by manufacturers and companies or not. But we also got to get away from this divisiveness, because I really feel that, I'm looking for candidates, quite honestly, that are running for office that are saying, I'm going to bring people together. We may not all always agree, and that's okay, but I want to bring people together, because I'm tired of this pitting one against the other kind of stuff that's going on out there. And here's the thing. We are one United States of America. We are one community, and our democracy demands that we work together in a civil way to try and solve the challenges that we have. And let's be honest about the challenges.
Thank you very much. I'll let you get back to the very important work that you do, and we always appreciate when you join us here.
Absolutely, Pete. Thanks for having me, as always.
All right, there you go. Andrew Sparr, everybody. That guy is so awesome and such a great leader, such a natural leader, and I've learned so much from him. He's also a great friend, dad, husband, all the way around. Everybody loves him. Andrew Sparr, FEA. You're lucky if you have him in your life, if you get to work with him. And he's just the best. So definitely tweet him and support that organization. If you're down in Florida, especially Andrew Sparr, FEA on Twitter. And certainly he will be back here soon, I'm sure. All right, now on to the Friday conversation with Christian, Finnegan, and Ophira Eisenberg. 3 of us performed last Saturday. Thanks to all of you who came out to see that show. We're trying to book some more dates. Looks like we'll be in South Jersey on July 13th together. I think we've got that one done. But a great time had by all. We talk a little bit about that and more. It's kind of fun because Christian had to keep leaving our conversation because someone was at the door and just kept coming back. And I don't know, it's just always great. No matter what we talk about, the 3 of us, everybody always lets me know how much they appreciate it. I certainly love doing it. So let's get to it. These 2 comedians are absolutely hilarious. Support everything they're doing. Go subscribe to Christian's new newsletter, New Music for Olds. Get Ophira's books, get their albums, follow them on Twitter. Let's do it.
Is your guys' do I sound choppy on your end? Am I choppy?
No.
I'm sorry, what'd you say? No, you sound fine. Your video seems to be choppy. No, maybe you just were frozen. Maybe you just were making a face first.
That's her face.
Because you were just kind of like,
it got me at the end.
Have I told you that my therapist always is like, did you freeze? And I'm like, no. She's like, oh, all the time.
Okay, I recorded that. Let's just jump right into it because you are so confrontational with your therapist, and I'm here for all of it. All of it. I wish I could have been that more confrontational with my therapist, as it seems you are regularly. That's healthy, I think.
It's funny that you picked up on that because Ophira and I shared a car for a few hours on Saturday, and yeah, you are dead on. She does not like this person. This is
I know. I probably should change.
Maybe that's the healthiest relationship with a therapist. I don't know. I mean,
the only therapist bit I ever did was about walking into the therapist and making assumptions about the person walking out.
Oh, yeah. There's always that. Or if you have a waiting room and you just have to look at each other and be like, anxiety.
It's almost more it's almost more impersonal, like forced impersonal than like if you were walking out of like a X-rated video booth or something. Like it feels,
it's
you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's kind of like,
it's worse.
I acknowledge you exist, but we're just going to pretend just sort of hello and then just keep going.
Yeah. The porn shop connection is more of a solidarity, like, good to see you. I get what you're doing. But the therapy thing is, you walk in and they're like all a mess. You almost feel like you have to, like, I've said to the therapist, do you need a moment? Because that didn't look.
I do that all the time. I do that to everyone. Like when I get my haircut, I'm like, do you need like a coffee? Maybe are you low blood sugar? Like, I don't want to be that haircut. I'm paying the same as everybody else. I don't want to be the haircut where they're like, yeah, I kind of checked out during that one.
Well, I can't relate to that. So let me move on to something else, which is I just want to say we did the show last Saturday. And again, for me, the best part is being with you two. Going to a diner made me feel like a comedian again. And performing with you made me feel like a comedian again. And you guys were both so funny. And thank you to everybody who came out. But again, Ophira, you drove up with Christian. And so if you could now talk a little bit more about his driving and what that was like, because I wasn't there for that. How was that?
Why did Christian leave the podcast?
I assume that he can listen to us, and I wasn't going to mention it for people listening. But if you're watching it, he's gone. He left.
Yeah, I just had to mention it. So I was like, this is a weird. Did you ask him to leave when we were going to talk about his driving?
No, he hears us.
Hi. Okay, he hears us. So good driver. And we were in like a cool Jeep, I'd like to say. So I don't often get to like ride around in a car.
He has a Jeep?
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. How did that make you feel? Like, what kind of person are you in a Jeep?
Well, I mean, first of all, you're just like, okay, like we're in a sports situation right now. So it was good, right? It's good. You don't have that, like, you're at a whatever SUV, you sort of have that parental feel. It felt like I was not a parent, Pete.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a hilarious.
I feel like my car has a parental feel about it, not just the car seat, but just a there's like things to take care of a child in it.
Yeah, my car has an environmentally conscious feel to it, but not a masculine one, and certainly not sporty. Yeah, my daughter could care less that it's an electric car, which is the only reason I get it is to role model for them. You're not actually making a difference. It's just trying to do. And my daughter's like, this car looks like a bunny, and I don't like it. I'm like, okay. That's not helpful.
Too bad.
Yeah, too bad for them.
But Christian, I will say this: the only bit of non-positive feedback I will give, and it totally did matter because, listen, when someone's driving, I'm just so happy that I'm not driving. Honestly, I don't love driving.
Right. Fair enough.
I don't love driving.
But yeah, you're still about to throw a stone at the driver.
Willing.
Yeah,
that's right. Which is. We got so engrossed in conversation a few times that we missed turns.
Oh, well, that's so are you blaming him for that?
Not really. It just
like
happened. He seemed more upset than I did.
Yeah, how does he
you were very blasé about my missing exits and stuff, and which I appreciate genuinely because it's not what I live with. But Sorry, I'm at QED right now, and there is a beer delivery, and so in a second I'm going to be disturbed again. I'm so sorry for your listeners to have to endure this. Feel free to cut around it, cut around me, cut me out entirely. Make this just Pete and Ophira.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time.
No, I know. Trust me, I know.
That you got cut out of a thing. I don't know. No, I don't want you here. I don't tell the beer guy how important of a podcast, John. Would you, if you were doing Joe Rogan, would you walk away to let the beer guy in?
The beer guy would be on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Yeah. The beer guy was the first guest. That's the A guest.
Not only would the beer guy be on Joe Rogan, he'd be giving medical advice.
Exactly.
Right. This particular beer, if you shove it up your ass, cures COVID.
Unbelievable how influential that guy has gotten. People often will just tweet like a reminder, he's just a guy. He's just a guy. Joe Rogan, he's not an expert in anything.
Another person. Yeah. So, but I will say in our car ride back, Pete, Christian and I covered a lot of territory.
Mm-hmm.
We did.
We have so many friends in common from the past, and he was one of the first people I knew when I moved to New York. So talked about like a lot of situations from the past. I admitted all my insecurities that I think got in my way of creating better friendships. We talked about death. We talked quite a lot about death.
Yeah.
We talked about therapy.
I mean,
I
call that Wednesday. But
do you talk a lot of, well, first of all, you should have taped that. I want to hear that conversation without me stupidly punching in. But do you talk or think a lot about death on a regular basis? Read about it, think about it, write about it, Christian?
Oh yeah.
Like how regular, like, and what's that like? Like, what do you mean?
I mean, it's I mean, it's music, it's the Knicks, and it's death. I mean, those are the three.
Really?
Those are the three pastimes for me. But I mean, some of it is just we have family. I don't want to call it trauma necessarily, but I mean, we have history and things like that.
You and Ophira have lost people.
You call it trauma. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, very different. Nothing similar, but equally kind of disruptive to maybe a ordered upbringing.
So is it? I'm sorry. Yeah. So is it more of a conversation generally, or a thought about how death and loss has impacted you, or is it as well a concern about your own mortality?
I don't know if I care about my mortality.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I mean, I do.
Not the right word. Yeah.
I don't think
fine. I totally misunderstood that. So
I think for me, I was like grief and loss and sort of putting it together on a daily basis.
And what does it mean? And how does it manifest itself? And how does it hold you back? How does it make you stronger? How does it make you weaker? All sorts of things like that.
Right.
Well, that must be, is that a conversation? Do you find people sometimes who have suffered the same kind of emotional trauma from that type of loss and click in and have those chats regularly? You guys kind of identify, like, yep, go ahead.
Well, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, for sure. And I do remember pretty much, it was like months after my mother died, which was just before the pandemic. I was at QED and I saw you, Christian. And I remember I just said something to you like, how does this work? How do you do anything? And you were like, we'll sit down for coffee sometime. And I was like, okay. And then there was a global pandemic.
Yeah. So. Hey, how'd that go for you? Where'd you land on that, Ophira?
So that's, I'm really interested in it. So is there a lot of like just how I've dealt with it, cope with it in that conversation, or how it's affected me, or what? What is it? Oh, he's got to go get the beer delivery.
Okay.
He's going to. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I mean, it's a little bit like there is a thing too, which I was saying to Christian, which this is I'm saying a sad thing. Sorry, Pete. Come on.
No, it's
your
fine.
Show pre-weekend, and I'm saying something sad.
I'm sure you'll come in with something hilarious soon after. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, so I think my father died when I was a kid, right, or a teenager, and then my mom died fairly recently before COVID. And so, the upside is, of course, I never had to teach her Zoom.
See? You did it.
But the grief is intense, and I did not know what to do with it. And I also felt like a little, that thing where it's like unfair, basically just totally unfair, like unfair. I felt singular. I was like, I do not know many people who go through this experience. All their kids are talking about hanging out with their grandparents. Like my child will not have that experience. So I felt this great sense of inequality, unfairness. Like I was singled out in a negative way by this world. And I said, and then the more terrible thing happened, which over the course of the last couple of years, somewhat to do with the age of my peers' parents and somewhat to do with the global pandemic, whether it was COVID or not great access to excellent hospital or medical services because of packed hospitals and exhausted medical services, people's parents died. And now I was first in a group that, of course, I didn't want to have membership to. And I was searching for people to talk to because I felt so alone. And now I feel there's too many of us.
Oh, wow. When you say there's too many of us, talking about people who have lost their parents who are dealing with this type of grief, what is that? What do you mean there's too many of us? What does that lead you to?
I just think like it is. So when there's, I've never really, my parents lived through World War II, but of course I didn't. And so I guess the global pandemic and living in America and Canada, I've never experienced firsthand the losses of war. So I guess living in a global pandemic, I was just like, I don't know what it's like for a large population to heal from so many things.
The collective loss and how that's impacting our generation, because it's our parents who most likely were in that age group of people who are most vulnerable to the virus. And so, wow, that's, it's all, isn't it all perspective? I mean, she was saying, Christian, that she, feels like in her life that she's been singled out with this too much tragedy, too much loss. And obviously that's probably fairly typical for people to feel that way. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree. I mean, certainly as I've gotten older, it feels like it's started to balance out some. And it's not like I had no real loss at all in my actual childhood. My younger brother had a heart transplant when he was very young, and he had open heart surgery when he was like 4 days old. And so he was always kind of on the precipice. Like when he was born, they gave him like 2 weeks to live, and then they gave him like 3 months to live, and then 3 years to live. And they ended up living until 19. And it was kind of just a constant, just specter hanging over everything. But I didn't actually experience any actual loss until I was 27. So I don't feel like, I never felt necessarily that I was unfairly, singled out. But then when my older brother died, it was kind of like, all right, well, this seems a little much, like, come on. And so, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like Ophira and I, our experiences are very different, but, complementary. Is that the word?
Yeah. We both had a pile on. We both had an experience like another.
Yeah. At a certain point, you want to just look up at God and say, will you please get off my face? Please.
Yeah. No, I've often yelled into the sky, not today, Satan.
Wow.
Whereas I'm kind of like, oh, all right, today, Satan. Sure. Today's as good as any day, Satan. I'm ready. Bring it.
Well, it must have been, I would imagine that was really helpful and therapeutic. I mean, I felt just being with you guys, just connecting with you and going through a thing together, doing a gig together and, sharing a little bit that we did. I just feel connected on a kind of solidarity. And if you then do the gig and do that and the way home, as so often happens, and you're talking about that, in the end, I want to think that you must have felt awesome about that because, and I'm sure people listening probably feel a bit seen as well, having similar experiences, I'm guessing.
Well, it's nice. I mean, car rides are nice in that sense because like how often, especially at a certain age, do you get just like long periods of uninterrupted conversation where there isn't that feeling of like, oh, am I boring this person or should I leave? You can't leave. You're in the car. You're going somewhere. You know what I mean? So it's like, we have these 2 hours to spend together. Yeah, you know what I mean? And so it's nice in that sense that it's like, all right, we're going to be talking for this time. And, I think
it's so weird that you say that, because I literally just had that feeling both times you fucking left us here just now.
Yeah. It's very different than this podcast where you can just tell that the both of us are just itching to get away from you at every turn.
Ophira's holding up a toy and fidgety. I ruined that thoughtful thing you were saying with my joke, but it seemed worth it.
Wasn't it though?
Nope.
I don't know.
It was not.
It was super thoughtful.
Wish I had it over again.
But then, can I just mention on air that poor Christian, the next day, he got sick.
Yes, I was going to ask. He's telling us
from our diner food, right?
I don't know what it was. I'm still sort of in the throes of food poisoning. I am 90%. I would say I'm 85% better.
Generally, I don't believe people when they say they got food poisoning. So I think we are going to ask you to prove it. Yeah, I just feel people use food poisoning to get out of having to hang out with you. Now, that wasn't the issue with Christian. It was like,
I'd already hung out with you.
Yeah, so I'm not insinuating that, but why are you lying? It's got to be something else. How do you know? Like, what happened?
Well, have you ever had food poisoning? Because it's a very
I had salmonella and sued Taco Bell.
Honestly,
no.
Did you really?
$1,500 in a class action lawsuit in 1995.
Did they sue you back for eating at Taco Bell? Like,
it was apparently one person working at the Taco Bell. The investigation led to did not wash his hands after he poopied, and 730 people in Syracuse were in the ER at the same time.
Crap.
And we were all like, "Yeah, we ate at Taco Bell in Camillus," and they put it together as investigators do. But I mean, it was bad. But go back to you. What happened?
Honestly,
I can't even believe that just $1,500. That's what I would like to say right now. But anyways, that's the litigious American in me.
Well, when you're a college freshman in 1995, I was like, yes, please give me some more. I'll take salmonella again for 15 G's. 15.
That's pretty sweet. Think of how much Taco Bell you can buy with that.
I haven't gone back.
I think you can buy a Taco Bell with $1,500.
Well, I still go to Taco Bell, but I haven't gotten any meat. Just a vegetarian. I still can't bring myself to get their meat. But back to you. So what happened? You were sick.
Well, what I had could have been salmonella. I don't know the variations of E. coli versus salmonella. All I know is that I went to bed Sunday night, and just over the course of that night, it was awful. And then all the next day I was like shivering, cold sweats,
How do you know it wasn't the Noble Pie?
I'm sorry, how do I know it was not the apple pie?
The pie from Leslie and Tom. Maybe they...
It was weird that there was like a piece of poop on top of the pie.
Yeah, that was that weird... raw egg.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, just a dead chicken. Like not even just a dead chicken.
We have the best fans.
It was... In all seriousness, my wife had much more of the apple pie than I did, and she is fine. So
and you ate only the poo.
Noble Pies people, you are in the clear. It's not you.
Oh, man, I'm sorry that so knocked you out for 3 days. You were...
Well, knocked out is too strong a word, but it was just like you can't get anything done. Do you know what I mean? You're just in constant... The first day was just all shivering and cold and miserable. And then the last 2 days, I've just been like just crippling stomach ache. Whereas every time you eat something 10 minutes later, you're just in, you're what I imagine cramps feel like. I don't know. But it's just been a drag, and I've accomplished nothing. And now I feel like I have all this stuff I want to do because I'm going to Amsterdam next week, and I feel way behind the eight ball. Yes.
Is Christian's wife going on a little vacation, right? It's a vacation?
Mm-hmm. Pure vacation.
So if anybody wants to give him Amsterdam tips, at Christ Finnegan, everybody.
Sure, why not? As long as you don't get offended if I don't do them. Like if you're like, you've got to try this restaurant. I mean, I don't. I
was just going to tell you about this one woman I paid to have sex with when I was in my 20s.
Yeah, and she was unionized, which was nice.
Are they unionized?
Yeah.
They
are?
Wow.
Very impressive.
I mean, they
local 69.
It's a local 69. Very good.
Regulating.
I love watching those shop stewards walk around.
Regulating sex work is a really great thing for a society. Honestly, I mean, it really it protects both sides of the transaction. I think, if so,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of unions,
it is weird going to Amsterdam as a 49-year-old man with his wife now that weed is not only legal, but kind of boring. You know what I mean? That it's like, oh, I'm actually just going to go to Amsterdam and to see a beautiful European city. There's no sort of like, dude, I'm going to Amsterdam, like, which is all of the 90s. Like, you couldn't say the word Amsterdam without people being like, you know?
So, and because I have some friends there who are Dutch, and so I would go there, of course, hang out with them, and they are so over all of that. They'd be like, they'd look at me with this look of disgust and go, do you need to go to a coffee shop while you're here? Yeah. Something. Yeah. And I'd be like, no, just hanging out, coffee. Let's just do coffee.
Strangely, they would have the same attitude towards the Anne Frank Museum, which is really upsetting.
I imagine that they probably treat tourists the way I look at like SantaCon people.
Oh yeah, like, right.
Oh, you think you're being fun? You're doing a thing. You couldn't be more exhausting.
Yeah. What time is your Metro North back? What time is it back? Can I just talk 1 second about a weird supply chain issue I came across today?
Yeah, it's always good to make people aware of what they can't get. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I walked into Starbucks because we were talking about coffee, but I wanted a tea, and I was like, "Hey, can I get a black tea?" They're like, "Oh, like English breakfast or Earl Grey," and I was like, "Yeah, either one's fine." And she goes, "Yeah, we're out of them. We've been out of them for 5 days. We have no tea." She was like, "Do you want hibiscus? Blah blah blah." I was like, "No, they're out of tea."
Weird. She had to go with English brunch.
Tea place.
I'm sorry.
Out of tea.
That seems very strange.
Right?
I have only run into one thing that I haven't been able to get, and it's we need a new liner for our pool because we let our friend use it and he destroyed it. But other than that, I haven't seen that, and I don't know if it's because of where I live. I mean, I obviously have seen prices increase. Have you had trouble getting anything such as simple as that, Christian, as tea? That's bad.
I don't think so. I live a pretty limited life. I only buy probably 8 things. It's like, as long as there's chicken salad, Diet Mountain Dew, and goldfish crackers, I'm pretty much set.
Oh my God. You are a 6-year-old.
I am.
You're
absolutely a 6-year-old. 100% I am a 6-year-old.
What did you do, Ophira? Like, were you mad? Did you throw a fit? What do you mean? Did you blame Biden?
No, I mean, I definitely went, "Goddamn Biden," and everyone applauded. No, I was a little miffed because I'd stood in line for about 20 minutes impatiently, and then I got up there and they were out of tea. And as I left, I thought, should they put up a sign? And then I mentioned it to my husband, and he was like, "Oh, is that so weird? I guess nobody buys tea there." And I was like, "No, it's actually that a lot of people buy tea there. That's so weird. You thought." But then I walked 1 block and came across a beautiful Italian coffee place that I did not know of. And I walked in and I thought, I don't want tea here. I want a cappuccino. And it came in a beautiful cup with a beautiful saucer and a little tiny bit of biscotti. And I was like, oh, I just didn't understand that this was what I was supposed to do.
Yes. Life was telling you to level up.
Exactly. So I took it and I drank it. And I remember I put my phone down and I leaned back and I drank the coffee and just thought, this is the moment. This is the one moment I'm going to enjoy.
There you go.
So there you go.
That's a triumph.
See, it worked out.
I like it.
Triumph.
All right. Well, I've already taken up too much of your time. Christian, do you have any parting thoughts? I guess we won't see you then. Are you excited?
Yeah.
Are you anxious about leaving the country?
Know when the next time I will technically next Thursday, when we record on Thursdays, I will be in Atlanta.
Oh.
But I don't know that I'll be able, whatever, we can talk about this later.
All right, well,
whenever I see you next, I will come back far more cultured.
Yes.
And, I'll have a slightly snotty attitude about beer and, culture and
travel.
Amstel. Bring back some Amstel water.
Yep, absolutely. And, I may be 10% less funny because I understand that the Dutch are not a particularly charismatic people.
They're going to steal your essence. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to say right now, half Dutch, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no sarcasm because the only way they talk is sarcastic. It's kind of amazing.
Okay. So I should go into it knowing that. Okay. Everybody told me that like everybody in France was going to be rude. And I went to Paris. I was like, no, these are just New Yorkers. That's it.
Totally.
That's hilarious.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. They're just
trying to get through it.
Yeah. They're just trying to get somewhere and you're in the way.
And you're trying to be a tourist in the place where they live.
Yeah. That's annoying. Yeah. It's annoying to anybody.
Yeah. They're like, yeah. My name's Amelie. Like, step aside.
Christian,
enough whimsy.
Ophira, thank you as always. Love you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, there you go. Thank you very much, Andrew Sparr, the Florida Education Association. Thanks to Christian and Ophira. Thank you to everybody who listens to and helps promote this show on social media. I love you guys. Can't do it without you or your subscription. This is my gig. This is my job, and I can't continue to do it here in the shed every day without your support. So please sign up if you haven't already. Welcome to all the new subscribers. I'll give some shout outs next week. Have an awesome weekend. Tell me what you've learned. I love you. Get outside. Send me your vitamin N pictures and be the change you want to see in the world. I'll talk to you Monday.
When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.